So far, in almost all of the examples you've worked with, you've been writing some code. That code gets loaded in and runs. It does something, usually involving an alert or a console log. And that's the end of the story. The program is complete, and the web page just sits there in a static state. In this section, I'm going to show you how to add interactivity to your programs. This involves using events to wait until something happens, and then run some bit of code when it does. The events we'll be covering here will include mouse events and keyboard events, but in the rest of the course, other types of events will play a big part as well. In JavaScript, an event means pretty much what it means in English. Something has happened. There are all kinds of events in JavaScript. Events that occur when pressing down or releasing keys on the keyboard, for moving the mouse, or pressing and releasing mouse buttons, touch events for devices with touch screens, and events for when something is loaded, to name a few of the most used ones. We say that you listen for events, which means that you indicate that you want to be informed when a certain type of event occurs, and then you handle those events, which generally means that you write a function that will be executed when that event occurs. Event handling usually looks something like this. So let's break this down. First, we have an element. Most events are associated with some HTML element on the page. In this section, we'll just be dealing with the document element, which represents the HTML tag itself. But in Lesson 3, you'll learn how to access any element on any HTML page. Associating events with a specific element is vital. This is what allows you to do different things when the user clicks on different buttons, for example. Then we have the add event listener. This is a method that exists on any element object. It has two parameters. First is the event that you want to listen to. This is just a string like mouse down or key up or click or load, etc. The second parameter lets you specify a function that will get called when that event occurs. Finally, there's the function itself. This is just a regular old function. A common way to name these functions is using the word on plus the name of the event. So we have onClick. Other variations specify the element that's the source of the event, such as onStartButtonClick. Again, this function will execute when the specified event occurs. When this function gets called, it will be passed a single parameter. This is an object that contains specific information about the event that just occurred. For example, in a keyboard event, it will contain the specific key that was pressed, whether or not the Control, Alt, or Shift keys were pressed, and some other information. In a mouse event, it will contain the mouse's position on the screen, as well as info about what mouse buttons might have been pressed. So when you create your handler function, you should usually define that function with a single parameter. You can call that parameter whatever you want, but I usually name it event so I remember what it is. Now here I've created a named function and passed the name of that function to the addEventListener method. But very often you'll see it written like this. Here we have another anonymous function, defined directly within the parentheses of the addEventListener method. This may seem very strange at first, but it's perfectly valid, and you'll see it often enough that you should get used to it. Either way, the function is created, and it gets passed to the method. In most cases, it doesn't really matter whether you use a separate name function like I did at first, or an anonymous function, and it's just a matter of what the developer who writes the code prefers. Some people think separate name functions are more readable, others think anonymous functions are more concise. You should be able to understand either one when you see them, though. Now let's deal with some real events. For the mouse, you'll mostly be dealing with the events mouse down, mouse up, click, and mouse move. And for the keyboard, key down and key up. For all of these, it should be pretty obvious what they represent. Mouse down and mouse up mean that the user pressed and released the mouse button while over a particular element. Click means that the user pressed and released the mouse button while over the same element. Mouse move means that the mouse moved while it was on top of a particular element. Key down and key up are pretty straightforward, but know that if the user holds a key down, you will probably get a continuous stream of key down events as long as the key is held down. Now let's just write a quick program that listens for some of these events and logs when one of them happens, along with a bit of info about that event. First, mouse down. The element we're listening on is the current document, so no matter where the mouse is, we should get the event. We'll just log the string mouse down. Let's test it. Yep, that works. Now we can use the event parameter to get the current X and Y position of the mouse. Again, event is an object. The mouse position will be on properties client X and client Y. So we can say mouse down with an X of event client X and a Y of event client Y, concatenating that all into one huge string. So we test that, and sure enough, the mouse position is being logged with the click. Now we can copy and paste that code and change the event name to mouse move. And we test that. And now we're getting a mouse move event whenever the mouse moves along with the current position. Not too surprising. Let's try some keyboard stuff without a key down listener. Here I'm appending the key code property of the event object. When I test this, you can see that it logs a number for each key that I press. This number is an integer that represents which key was pressed. This number is generally the same as the ASCII code of the character of that key. So we can use a special string method called fromCharCode that will convert that number into the actual character that it represents. So we say key down plus string fromCharCode event.keycode. We'll try that. Here you can see that this works for most of the alphanumeric keys, but can be unpredictable for other keys such as left square bracket, right square bracket, and backslash. Here's a link to the page that lists the different key codes and what keys they refer to. You might want to keep that handy. And that's about all there really is to handling events. Go ahead and add listeners for mouse up, click, and key up if you want to see those in action. It's good practice. You should also check out the documentation for keyboard events and mouse events at these two links. Look at some of the other properties on those events and try to write some code that reads and logs some of those properties. Or if you're really ambitious, try writing an if or if-else statement that does different things based on different properties, such as logging one message if one key is pressed and another message when another key is pressed. For most web pages and simple applications, you'll mostly be dealing with mouse click events on buttons or other elements. But if you ever wind up programming games, you might be doing a lot of work with keyboard and other mouse events. As I said, you'll be seeing all kinds of other events crop up as we progress through the course, so keep an eye out for them. We'll wrap up Lesson 2 with some more advanced debugging techniques next.